Hello, welcome back everyone. Welcome to my channel. I'm so appreciative, you know that. If you are new, welcome. Please give me a chance and stick around. My name's TJ. New Zealand Mysteries has a Facebook page, and I obviously make videos, mainly about New Zealand cases, but from others around the world as well. I also live stream where we have a lot of fun and talk about cold cases from the rest of the world. We actually have like a spinning thing we do, spin the wheel, and whatever state or country it lands on, that's what we do a live stream about, and we're looking into the place and cold cases. Anyway, everything you need to know is in the description box below, including all the sources I use. There's also ways to donate. I spend a long time researching, recording, and some editing, because I kind of leave my mistakes in for you guys to have a laugh at me. And I also pay to have this video sponsored on Facebook, so it reaches more people. If you can help for a little, it's $3 a coffee. Check out down below. Grab your coffee. I've got mine. Please like, sub, share, follow, whatever, and let's get into our case today. We are looking into the case of missing man Richard Hinkley, and just in the last couple of days the police have said that there is a $20,000 reward to help solve this case. So we're going to look into it all. Thanks for sticking around. I know my computer's been at the doctor for another couple of days again. Hopefully I don't have to get it fixed anymore, because I don't have the money and I don't have the patience. So let's hope everything goes well. Let's get into it, guys. Here we go. So this happens in the city of Christchurch. Ōtautahi is the Maori name, is the largest city in the South Island of New Zealand and the seat of the Canterbury region. Christchurch lies on the South Island's east coast, just north of Banks Peninsula on Pegasus Bay. We'll show you where Christchurch is on the map shortly. The Avon River, or Takaro, follows through the centre of the city with an urban park along its banks. The city's territorial authority population is 392,000 people and includes a number of smaller urban areas as well as rural areas. The population of the urban area is 380,600 people. Christchurch is the second largest city by urban area population in New Zealand after Auckland. It is the major urban area of an emerging sub-region known informally as Greater Christchurch. Let's quickly have a look. So if you don't know, here's Christchurch on the map, the red dot there, in the South Island. So we're the biggest in the South Island. The city suffered a series of earthquakes between September 2010 and January 2012, with the most destructive occurring at 12:51 p.m. on the 22nd of February 2011, in which 185 people were killed and thousands of buildings across the city suffered severe damage, with a few central buildings collapsing. By late 2013, 1,500 buildings in the city had been demolished, leading to ongoing recovery and rebuilding projects. The city later became the site of a terrorist attack targeting two mosques on 15th of March 2019, in which 51 souls were killed, and which was described by the Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern at the time as one of New Zealand's darkest days. So a lot for Christchurch that they've had to go through. Let's start briefly at police website, police.govt.nz. Missing person Richard Hinkley, date of birth 1966, date of disappearance 25th of December 2015. This is Christmas Day, guys. He's a European, 184 centimetres tall. He often wears a beanie or a hat. So all this says is Richard was last spoken to on Christmas Day, 25th December 2015, and has not been seen or heard from since. Now his reference number is 160210/8867. I'm going to have that in the description box below. Also where you can call if you have information as well. I mean, someone out there is going to talk. Someone wants this money. So come on now, guys. We've actually been quite lucky in this case, because there's actually, surprisingly for New Zealand, there's like 3 or 4 articles, and they all have a little bit of different information. So let's get into this one. Neighbour says police raided his home, accused him of murdering Richard Hinkley 2 years after his disappearance. And I tell you now, the name of this guy is in the article, but everyone is innocent and proven guilty, and yeah, just keep that in mind. A man says police have accused him of murdering his neighbour nearly 2 years after Richard Hinkley went missing. And this is January 11, 2018. He said, they did over my flat, kicked me out for 2 days, dug up my garden, went through everything, took half my stuff away, his neighbour said. I don't know a thing, I'm not involved. So Richard Hinkley, 49, was last seen at Kiwi Bank in Edgware, Christchurch on December 12, 2015. So let's have a quick look where that is. If we zoom in, I'm zooming in, I have a kind of a dot where Edgware Road is, and his house is on Madras Street, which this is. I just don't actually know which one. I think I'm going a bit too fast for that, so we'll keep on moving till it catches up. The same day, the Insolvency and Trustee Service granted him a no asset procedure. I don't know if you guys have heard of that. It's an alternative to bankruptcy when someone is up to $47,000 in debt. Richard had not contacted family since. So that was December 12th. Police say the case remains a missing persons inquiry, calling suggestions they were running a homicide inquiry premature. Richard's relative said she thought foul play could be a possibility and was deeply distressing. And my heart goes out to the family. Of course, family, we really feel for you guys, and we're really, really sorry you're going through this. We hope we can help. That's what we're here for. Investigators raided the guy's home, which is directly in front of Richard's, shortly before Christmas last year. He said, while searching his home, Lawrence said police took him to the police station and told him they believed he murdered his neighbour. I've got no idea what happened. He could have left the country for all I know. Police think I had some big falling out with him, but I didn't really. Other people certainly did. I don't know why they aren't investigating them. Who aren't they investigating? I reported him missing. I don't know if that has something to do with it. I don't know if people have been talking. And of course, we know in the true crime world that if you are the person that reports a murder or disappearance, whatever, you're looked at. Person of interest, maybe, I don't know, but you are looked at. Police charged him with burglary. They accuse him of breaking into Richard's home in the days after reporting him missing, stealing and then pawning Hinkley's laptop. He did actually appear in the Christchurch District Court on the burglary charge in December. It is understood he is defending the charge and will appear next month. I think we hear more about that. He said he got on with Richard. He was a friendly guy, a bit different. He says, of course, there's no evidence. I didn't do anything, so how can they charge me? He said there's a bit of anxiety that they could come up with some rubbish story, but the truth is out there. I don't know anything about it. He declined to say who he thought police should investigate. Let's hear a little bit about Richard. A beautiful character. Hinkley's auntie, Jill Martin, who we heard speak at the beginning, said the family was struggling to understand what happened to him. That's the worst of it. She said, you start to think now that he could have taken his own life, maybe, but we don't know. Despite no contact from her nephew for more than 2 years, she would not rule out possibility that he was still alive. She said all things are possible. Even the police would probably say that people turn up. But you would wonder what he's living on. I find that the most distressing thing is to think that he could be suffering in some way, or someone's using him as whatever. That's a very uncomfortable to think of. Richard is an only child. He lived with his parents until he was 17. When they separated, his father eventually moved to Australia and his mother died in 2011. Jill says this was a very loving lad, probably old-fashioned in some ways. He belonged to a different generation. He was just a sweet lad. Housing New Zealand, which is now called Kainga Ora, I think. Oh gosh, no, I don't know if it is. Don't quote me on that, but I'm sure we'll find out as we move along. They had Richard's tenancy cancelled in July of 2016. Two of his aunts cleaned his house and stored some items in case he returned. And I think that's one aspect that we actually don't think of when people go missing or something happens to them. What happens to the house that they were in, and the poor families that have to go in there and take stuff out, and trying to choose what you keep, how much do you store, how long do you store it for your loved one. Yeah, that would get me. She said the police said at the moment it's a missing persons inquiry. It's an active investigation. There are a number of persons of interest, nothing more, nothing less. Clearly he's gone since 2015, so we have some concerns. Detective Sergeant Michael Freeman said in 2016 police interviewed multiple people about Hinkley's disappearance. Foul play and self-harm were among the possibilities police were investigating. He said, "We were looking for a smoking gun at this stage, but we haven't found anything. We still have an open mind on what happened to Richard. We just simply don't know." And this was stuff.co.nz. Let's look at the next one from nzherald.co.nz. Cold case. Richard Hinkley, the mysterious case who vanished on Christmas Day. This was by Elizabeth Binning, 30th of November 2021. So I'm trying to do these in chronological order and just get the information, hopefully new information, and especially information about the type of person that he was, because we really want to know the person that Richard Hinkley was. When police turned up at Richard Hinkley's home after a neighbour reported him missing, they found a clean and tidy unit with Japanese decor and plenty of family pictures on display. There were no signs of a struggle. His laptop was still there, and everything was in order except for his partially unmade bed. So they said that it was a double bed, and only one side had looked like it had been slept in, and the sheets pulled back. And compared to the rest of the house, that was really tidy. That looked a bit odd to them. It was February 10th, 2016, and although the fridge was well stocked, the milk had long expired. Gross. We know how bad that is. And his much-loved plants in the backyard hadn't been cared for in some time. Inquiries quickly revealed the 49-year-old was last seen on December 23rd. The last known conversation anyone had with him was when an uncle called on Christmas morning, so on the 25th. According to his uncle, it was a shorter than normal conversation, and Hinkley, who sounded a bit tense, quote, a bit tense, unquote, said he'd call back when he was a bit more awake, but he didn't. After that, he simply vanished. Nearly 6 years on, and police still have no idea what happened to the Christchurch man. Everything seems to stop at his house on the 25th of December. It's 2015. It's as if time has stood still since then, said Detective Sergeant Michael Freeman. It's It's as if someone has got out of bed, answered a phone call, made a cup of tea, left their slippers on the floor, and just walked out the door. He said police were contacted by Housing New Zealand, which is now Kainga Ora. On February the 10th, they had received a call from a neighbour who was concerned he hadn't seen him for several weeks. So Kainga Ora used to be Housing New Zealand, and it's state housing. Police carried out a welfare check but found no signs of a break-in or any misadventure. The flat was neat and tidy, but there didn't appear to be any missing items. But I mean, it's hard to tell, if there is missing items, really, isn't there? I mean, if you don't know what items are supposed to be there. Police started contacting known associates, But when no one had seen Richard for several weeks, they launched an official missing persons inquiry, which involved trawling through all aspects of his life. Yeah, not nice. A picture began to emerge of a man who loved all things Japan. He even learned the language and decorated the walls of his flat with Japanese wallpaper. I know people that love things to do with Japan, anything to do with Japan. So it's not just Richard that was into this stuff. I know people that are into this stuff. He was estranged from his father, but had a close relationship with his mum and good reputation with colleagues. He once worked with a fishing trawler. He had worked here and in Australia, and other jobs included time as a taxi driver and in construction. So he's had a few jobs and different types of things. He also managed his money well until in 2004 he was involved in a car crash that left him with serious spinal and head injuries. In 2011 his mum died and things changed dramatically for Richard. Trigger warning, we're going to talk about mental health and depression a little bit, so if that hurts or triggers, just jump off. See you next time. But alas, we will keep going. His family says the loss hit him hard. He suffered from depression and he started drinking heavily. Emotionally, he took a dive with all that grief, his Aunt Jill Martin said. He also moved into a world where he dabbled in drugs, had more associates than long-term friends, and ended up in financial trouble. His family still don't know any of these factors, or if any of these factors played a role in his disappearance. Freeman describes Hinkley, or Richard, as a unique and slightly quirky individual who would invite associates to his home where they would listen to music, drink, smoke, Mary Jane. There were often disagreements, and friendships often didn't last long, as he was prone to lose his temper if things didn't go his way. Most of the time Richard was quite placid, but he'd rise to the occasion if somebody pressed the wrong button, recalls Patsy, another one of his aunts. He'd stick up for himself and others if he thought there was a wrong being done. Detective Inspector Michael Ford, who was not involved in the case at the time but was brought in to provide a fresh perspective on the disappearance, said finding out what happened to Richard was difficult because there was no body. Options include the possibility that Hinkley took his own life, left of his own accord, and didn't want to be found or was killed by somebody else. Now, they're talking about a show that this information came in on, and it's called Cold Case, and I will put the link down below. It's from TVNZ On Demand. You can actually go back and watch it, and a program, obviously. So a lot of this information came out of that program. Locating Richard is the key to the mystery, he said. When we locate Richard, we will be able to establish how he's got there, why he is there, and who else is involved. And I always say, I feel for people or for families that have missing relatives, because not knowing and not being able to lay their loved one to rest is just, I couldn't imagine how that would be. So money is one factor that could play into all these possibilities. Richard had traditionally been very good with his money and finances, but by the time he went missing, he was looking at insolvency. We talked about that no asset procedure that he sorted out before, working with the budget advisor, and he was trying to repay close to $50,000 worth of debt. So he really got into trouble financially. He had started using a credit card when his mother died, putting the cost of her funeral on the card, and then making regular cash withdrawals from ATMs the following year. I told my kids to never get credit cards. By 2015, the monthly withdrawals were happening at an alarming rate until July, when his card became maxed out. Police are still unsure what he did with the cash. Gambling was considered, but there was no real evidence of that. Associates described how he would flash around the money and count it in front of them. I think that sounds like odd behaviour, and I wonder if this could be... We don't know what the head injury did to him when he had that car crash, and head injuries can do some damage and make people do odd things sometimes, I guess. None of them seemed to know where it came from or what it was spent on. On December 23rd, so 2 days before he went missing, he met a budgeting staff member. He appeared to be on track and had set up the no-act procedure thingy. I forgot the name of it, and he was getting on top of it. Police have questioned whether the shame of that no asset procedure, the insolvency, overwhelmed him, if he used the money to leave his former life and flee overseas undetected, or if associates he flashed cash in front of had taken advantage of that and something more sinister happened as a result. He says, I think it is certainly a bit of a dream to accumulate a bit of cash and create a new identity, but I think he's still in New Zealand, said Detective Sean Greenall, who has also been involved in the case. Freeman said the drug world was fickle, so could have played a role in this disappearance. He said, let's face it, people get killed over an ounce, a pound. If something goes wrong, that could be a possibility, but we just don't know. If foul play was involved, Greenall believes more than one person would know about it because Richard is a big, large man, standing about 184 centimetres tall. And for you folks that aren't in New Zealand, I don't know what that is in feet. You'll have to figure that out. Thanks for hanging in there. I know this is a long case, this one, but I'm kind of glad of that because we're actually getting details which we don't normally get, so I'm quite glad. Police say there weren't any signs that Richard had planned to end his life or flee and create a new one. He had what would have been fresh milk, bread in his cupboards, and he had all his clothes there, and you'd often expect a body to turn up by now if he'd chosen to take his life. The only thing that looked out of place in his flat was the partially unmade bed. It was noticeable because it was a double bed that had only been slept on one side. It struck him as unusual given the cleanliness of the rest of the house. Again, his laptop was missing the second time police searched the home. They later tracked it down. It had been pawned a few days after neighbours reported his disappearance to Kaingaora. It was reformatted and sold online, so all possible evidence or clues about his state of mind was gone, which is such a shame because we don't know what he was doing on that computer, and it could have given a lot of clues, so that's tough. Police say the length of time it took for his disappearance to be reported to police, combined with his lack of good friends, state of mind, and their laptop being reformatted, has made the investigation more difficult, especially in the absence of a body. They believe the answer lies with the public, and that's why I do these videos, and that's why you guys like, share, follow, all that stuff, because you want to help as well. This is very solvable. It's just finding that piece of evidence or information that leads us down the right path, said forward. It's just so important. If the community have information, they tell us. We want to know where he is, because if we find him, everything else will fall into place. Freeman said it's difficult not knowing what happened. He said, it stays with you. Some of these people you don't find because we've got families. I'm a parent myself. I've got 2 daughters. No parent should have to wonder where their child is, missing or dead. And I guess sometimes in true crime, and in a lot of ways, we forget about we talk about the effects on victims and their families, of course, but sometimes I think we forget about the effect that it has on law enforcement and fire people and ambulances, the things that they see and possibly have to carry with them. We do forget about that. He said you look around the room and he can see there are family memories there, lots of photographs and happy times. He's someone's son, someone's uncle or relative. His family wants some closure. We just have a moment of time. We can evidentially, I should say, put him at his address on Christmas Day, but almost from 10 o'clock that day, Richard just ceased to exist. something that remains difficult for the family to cope with. His father died a few years ago without knowing what happened to his son, and that just breaks my heart. We lost other family members in the last few years, but know what happened. We're able to say goodbye. Oh yeah, so they know what happened. They've lost family. They know what happened. They can say goodbye. But in the case of Richard, we just don't know what happened. There's not a day that goes past that his family don't think about him. She said, when I think of Richard now, I'm just wondering, where are you, Richard? She said, if Richard is no longer alive, we want to bring him back and put him with our ancestors. Breaking heart, guys. Okay, we're going to look at stuff.co.nz. This was by Sam Sherwood on November the 30th, 2021. Murder, suicide, or a new identity, the mysterious disappearance of Richard Hinkley. And I chose this one because there is a few bits and pieces about him that we haven't heard before. Walking into Richard Hinkley's two-bedroom flat on the fringe of Christchurch's city centre, police found few clues to account for his disappearance. The 49-year-old, who had been missing for 7 weeks, had left a pair of sandals neatly in the middle of the living room, with a pair of jandals beside the sliding door. His kitchen was clean and tidy, and above his clock was a collection of more than a dozen cans of Sapporo, the oldest beer brand in Japan. His fascination with Japanese culture extended to the living room, with Japanese writings all over his wallpaper, as well as lanterns, posters of Japanese pop culture, and a large map of Japan. So when we're talking about this guy loves Japan, he loves Japan. He also was known to relatives as Mr. Bean due to his mannerisms, and had hung all of his clothes neatly in the wardrobe. It sounds like, although his parents aren't around to support him, he's got some family that really love him. The last known person to speak to Richard was his uncle, who called him on Christmas morning 2015. It was about 7:30 a.m. and Richard was a bit terse. What the hell does terse mean? I'm thinking it has to be tense. I think we read somewhere that it's tense. So just a little mistake. We all make mistakes. We have brain farts. The two men spoke for about 10 minutes, and his uncle said he would catch up with him later in the morning when he was more awake. Power usage from Richard's home showed him moving around the house until 9 a.m. The power usage then goes to standby devices, and it appears he left home. It was not until February 10th the following year that his neighbour reported him missing. So we're going... That's a long time to be missing, isn't it? Sadly, and not reported. I'm not sure why it took so long to report. His other neighbours hadn't seen him around, and I suppose the neighbour said I hadn't seen him as well, so I thought maybe I should call someone about it. 6 years on, his disappearance remains a mystery, with police making a fresh appeal for information to find him as part of their investigation, and they dubbed this one called Operation Madras, because he lived on Madras, I guess. Hinkley, no, not Hinkley, try Richard Hinkley, I'm sorry Richard, was an only child. He lived with his parents until they separated when he was 17. His father, who suffered from post-polio syndrome, eventually moved to Australia. Richard, who was a bit of a recluse, was 195 centimetres tall. I'm sure that was different before. Of solid build, had a shaved head, and often wore a beanie or a hat. So we've got a cool picture here that we haven't seen before. Looks like his living room. And they're talking, there's obviously a Japan map on the wall. He was a private person, but he also enjoyed the company of others and had established some friendships. We understand, we've said before, he has mates around, they smoke a bit and drink a bit and have a bit of fun. He would also make them smoothies, apparently. Unfortunately, most of the relationships would break down, in part due to some physical altercations with associates. He did have a bit of a temper, but he was also trying to reach out to people to form those relationships. Richard was paranoid, and at one point had furniture blocking his garage door, telling a relative it was in it was there in case someone wanted to come in. It would give him a bit more time. His aunt describes her nephew, Richard, as a unique individual. She said there was a lot to Richard. He was a deep thinker, but he also had a great sense of humour. You could have a lot of fun with him, you could joke around and just thoroughly enjoy his company, and I could do with a whole lot more of it. It just sounds delightful. It sounds like they've just got such a real nice bond. Martin says Richard immersed himself in Japanese culture, as we know, and actually learned to speak Japanese. At one stage, he rented a big house and filled it with students who helped him with his Japanese while he helped them with their English, which is pretty cool. And we know again that his life took a turn when his mother died. That, combined with the earthquakes, she said, sent him into depression. He was a man that loved to learn and he had hopes and dreams, but the year of 2011 was difficult for him. He had no siblings to share that grief with, and his father was living in Australia battling his stuff. So very hard time for Richard, and lonely, I think, and his grief would have been immense. Despite the countless aftershocks, Richard turned down an opportunity to move to the North Island to live with his maternal relatives because of his deep loyalty to the city of Christchurch. He loved Christchurch and just wanted to be there. While Martin was aware that Richard had been going through a tough time, it wasn't something he tended to share over the phone. He kept it light. He was talking to his elderly auntie, so he told me all the positive things. We had a laugh about things. He didn't really get into many theories. But we know that he had financial issues. We've covered this. The credit card debt, it says on here, was about $12,000. A year later, it was $29,000. Now, we also heard they said about, my hair's sticking up. We also heard that he was doing cash withdrawals from that credit card. That was peaking about May and June with more than $5,000 withdrawn over that period. Eventually, he maxed out his credit card. His spending was largely on alcohol, cannabis, and other items. He regularly used food places and got food parcels, and no cash was found at home. There's a big question about what he's using that cash on and where did it go. Obviously, they're saying that for the amount of money that he was maxed out on the credit card and the $5,000 withdrawals, where is this money? There's nothing to show for it. So that's really weird. It would be good to know what happened there. It appears Hinkley, who was on a benefit, lived from pay to pay and had little money in his bank account at the time of his disappearance. He had no major assets such as a car and lived quite a meagre lifestyle. So here we have another picture of his kitchen. The last known sighting again was December 18 from the budget advisor. They had got that bankruptcy and debt stuff in line. But then on December 12, we haven't heard this, he went to the Kiwi Bank in Edgware, a short walk from his home. He checked his balance and put a pin on his card. He later went to the dentist to make plans to get his teeth fixed. Now, I don't know about you guys, but when I see someone that's making appointments, like making a dentist appointment, going through this budgeting stuff and doing this insolvency stuff, if you were going to go missing, would you bother with this stuff? I wouldn't have thought so. But Martin puts the debt down to his spiralling mental health. She said, I can see how he would have got into debt, which is not Richard. He always used to be really good with money, but things happened. When I last spoke to him, he had addressed that and could see his way forward. It's like he vanished nearly 6 years on. No answers. There's a number of scenarios. I was about to say scenarios, but I'm not quite sure that's a word. There's a number of scenarios you could pretty much run wild. You could say he's gone out, had an argument with someone. He could have gone out somewhere and had a medical event. He could have been murdered. He could have just planned his own demise with all the problems he was having with the cash disappearing. So he did have cash on him. Did he have cash on him? Where did that cash go? And going through insolvency, he could have established a new life with a new identity. I think that would be really hard in New Zealand to start a new life with a new identity. New Zealand's only got 5 million people. I don't know. I think it's too small for that. So he says, nothing has come up in the last 6 years. Missing person inquiries, people normally turn up after a short time, so it's unusual for someone to be missing for so long. But we know it's not that unusual because we cover the missing people in New Zealand. Detective Inspector Michael Ford says the case continues to be treated as a missing person, but is getting the same scrutiny as would a homicide inquiry. So now we're just going to shift quickly to stuff.co.nz. This is January 31st of 2022, so just this year. Wanted to share this one. Christchurch man officially declared dead 6 years after disappearing. So the coroner has ruled a man missing without a trace for more than 6 years has died. However, the coroner said there was insufficient evidence to determine whether Richard Hinkley died after becoming lost or injured, whether he took his own life or if he was killed by another person. This just goes through all the stuff that we've really already talked about. A report by Chief Coroner Judge Deborah Marshall, released to stuff.co.nz, examined his mysterious disappearance. On December 12th, he made his last FPOS transaction at the dentist. He was told he needed $3,500 worth of treatment. Oh my F&G. Dentists are so expensive. I reckon Kiwis have the worst teeth. And we're going to the budget advisor. Apparently the budget advisor, the dentist, I think, said he appeared strange and offered him drugs. It's not clear what drugs he offered. Also, when they entered his home on February 10th, the laptop was there, and during the second search of his home on April 13th, nothing suspicious was found. Hinkley's phone, laptop, keys, and FPOS card were not there. The coroner said Hinkley's phone, or Richard's phone, is still active, but no one answered the phone, and the person in possession of it did not respond to messages left by the police. Police inquiries with Immigration New Zealand found no record of Richard leaving the country. I mean, he would have had to have a passport and to get out of the country, so no. The coroner concluded that despite an investigation, police have been unable to establish what happened to him. There was insufficient evidence to decide how he had died, but he's declaring him dead. Richard's aunt Jill said the coroner's ruling was no surprise, as there was no evidence of him being alive. This does not give me closure because I still don't know what happened. I was pretty certain in my mind he had already passed away, but I just would like to know what happened. That's what's keeping me going, is that one day we might find out. And gosh, I mean, we're nearly done here. Please, if you know anything, the information's going to be down below. Nearly there. So this is just the cold case on police.govt.nz. There's a few photos we'll look at quickly, and just at the bottom, investigators are asking for the public's help. Did you see Richard on Christmas Day 2015? Did Richard attend the City Mission's annual Christmas lunch at Christchurch East in Gloucester Street? Did anyone see him there? Were you working on Christmas Day 2015 at a service station or a dairy and recollect a very tall man coming in to buy something? They need your help. Again, I'll have all the links in below. The most exciting thing that happened 23rd, so 3 days ago, police announced $20,000 reward for information about missing man Richard Hinkley. Police feared the circumstances of his disappearance were suspicious. They say they've made extensive inquiries, but unable to provide family with any definitive answers. We have to keep an open mind, however, it is extremely odd that Richard had just disappeared. Hinkley had not made contact with anyone in the past 6 years, and his bank accounts have not been touched. Someone out there either recognises this man or knows where he is, and our aim is to give the family the closure they deserve after such a long time. They do deserve this. The reward will be paid for information or evidence that leads to Richard's location and or the identity of any person or persons responsible for his disappearance. The offer will remain in place until January 31st, 2023. So guys, we've got a job to do. I need help to get this in front of as many New Zealanders as I can, as many Kiwis. We need to share it, we need to like it, we need to sub, we need to do all those things. We need to help this family hopefully get the answers they need for them. And thank you so much for hanging out with me. I know this was a long one. I really enjoyed a long one though, because sometimes it's just not enough information, so I did enjoy it. So do all those things you need to do, and I'll see you soon. Thank you for coming. You guys are amazing. Bye now.